Ross, let me start with the scene today. A patient goes into a hospital with a painful knee. They meet their surgical team. They're taken into theatre. The lights are bright. The instruments are laid out. You've got the scene. They receive anaesthetic. They wake up sometime later. Small incisions on their knee, bandages, recovery pain. Everything there tells them that the operation has happened. Except for some patients, in one famous study, the key part of the operation had not happened at all.
Sandy, the crazy result is that the real operation did not outperform the fake one.
Yeah, not a sugar pill, fake surgery.
That seems vaguely illegal, but that's right. That's why placebo is not a small topic. It actually forces medicine to ask a really difficult question. When a patient improves, what actually did that work?
Yeah, was it the knife?
Sometimes.
Was it the drug?
Sometimes.
Maybe it's the ritual.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. It's more often than we'd like to admit.
That feels like our territory, Ross.
It does, Sandy. Cells code capital and a pretty awkward amount of theater.
Indeed. So welcome to the long game, everyone. We're here to demystify the science and to unpack how Scottish ideas become medicines, devices, and companies.
Hey, Sandy. I'm Ross Kagan, Regis Professor of Precision Medicine at University of Glasgow and Director of the McNabb Center for Cancer Innovation.
And I'm Sandy Weir. I've spent a lot of my career at the intersection of technology, investment, and health innovation.
Yeah, and as you say, this is a podcast about the collision of cells, code, and capital.
And today we're talking about the placebo effect. It sounds simple: a sugar pill, a fake treatment, mind over matter.
Yeah, Sandy, that of course is the cartoon version, and that's why we're doing this. The real version is much more interesting. I'm actually really looking forward to chatting about this. Placebo is not fake healing, and it is not magic, as we'll explain. It's the biology of expectation, and that's real biology. It's what happens when you have trust, ritual, memory, fear, price, and meaning, and that changes what the brain and body does.
So let's set out one boundary early, Ross.
Absolutely. So placebo does not cure cancer. We're not arguing that this cures everything. It does not kill bacteria. It does not remove an appendix. It does not fix a broken bone. Sandy, if you need antibiotics, if you need surgery, insulin, chemo, radiotherapy, belief is not a substitute.
Great. So that's all the mystical nonsense out of the way.
That's right. But placebos can change symptoms. They have an incredible effect on pain, nausea, fatigue, anxiety, movement, and basically the overall experience of being sick. It can also mislead doctors. It can distort clinical trials, as we well know. And it has a great effect on inflating markets, and it makes weak treatments appear stronger than they actually are.
Yeah, and what I'm so interested in talking about with you today, Ross, is, does this not mean that the mind can cure the body, or is it more precise than that? And I think you're going to help guide us on the questions around.
Yeah, that's what makes this interesting, because I think the better question to ask is, how does the body respond to meaning? We build all these structures that create meaning throughout the health system, and the body responds to it. So what are we exactly talking about?
Yeah, so let's start with the basic definition. A placebo is usually described as a treatment with no active ingredients. So that could be a sugar pill, a saline injection, a fake cream, a sham procedure.
Yeah, that definition is useful, but it hides the most important point, pretty much the point of today's podcast, which is the placebo is not the pill. The placebo is the meaning attached to the pill. So a tablet arrives in a packet. Packet has a name. The doctor explains it to you. The patient has a history with medicines. They have expectations, perhaps good history, perhaps things didn't go so well. The tablet maybe have a brand on it that they recognize, or maybe it's generic. It could be very expensive. That gives meaning to it, right? It can come from a clinician the patient trusts, or in some cases, as we are seeing more and more, from a system the patient does not trust. So all of that baggage, all that meaning, all that structure arrives with the molecule, with the pill. So in a clinical trial, we try to separate the active molecule from all that surrounding meaning. But of course, in real life, patients receive both.
Yeah, markets understand this very well. A product is never just a product. It's the box, it's the logo, the price, the reputation, the expert endorsements. You see this a lot in US television when you watch the
Yeah,
adverts on the
so weird, but it's
daytime
true.
television, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's the story that's attached to all of that. We see that with whiskey, with phones, with trainers, with restaurants, you name it, investment funds, all the rest of it. We see the same pattern. The thing itself matters, but the story changes perceived value. What is strange in medicine is that perceived value can feed back into the body.
Yeah, and a side note, I was an adjustment to not seeing medicines advertised on television when I moved to the UK. I kind of miss those Viagra ads. Um, so I think your point is an important one, which is that this meaning does not sit outside biology. It is part of the biology because it enters all of the body through the brain. So if a patient believes treatment is coming, the brain will alter pain signaling. That's what the brain does. If the patient is scared, symptoms can become more intense. If the clinician is trusted, you trust them, then you can relax a little bit. And so uncertainty is less. So in other words, if the ritual is familiar, the body recognizes, right, help has arrived.
Yeah, and that's what makes medicine sound like theater.
Well, actually, medicine is theater. And you made this point a little while back when you talked about Hippocratic Oath and other structures behind what doctors go through. They don't go through this just to make themselves, feel good and chant things. This is all a part of the structure that they then bring to the patient that allows them to have confidence. And as we're going to talk about today, that really does matter. So that really, I'm going to put this, if you have sepsis, for example, you do need antibiotics. You have a ruptured appendix, you need surgery, as we discussed. Cancer, you need evidence-based treatments. But that theater really strongly adds to it. It doesn't replace the biology, but it can strongly enhance it. In some cases, can determine whether it works or not.
Yes, I think I'm beginning to get it now, Ross. So the argument is not that medicine is just theater; it's that medicine is biology delivered through theater.
Yeah, exactly, Sandy. And that theater can change the biology of suffering. So, and that takes us to the one I think everybody understands most with placebo is pain. So we often think of pain, it's a basic alarm system. You touch something hot, the hand sends a signal, the brain says pain, and you pull back. But pain's not just a signal. Pain is an interpretation of what is happening. The brain asks things like, okay, I got the pain part, but how dangerous exactly is this? Okay, this is how we can go on roller coasters and turners and decide, okay, we're not going to just get tossed out of it. How much attention do I need as the brain to keep my body safe? Am I scared about this? Can I do something about it? So pain really changes with context. This is something we could probably easily do a podcast on. So a footballer, for example, keeps playing after an injury, and they only feel that pain later because they're just so into the game. Famously, soldiers may not notice some pretty serious wounds in the moment because they've got other things on their mind and they don't pay attention to it. And of course, the classic child falls. Sandy, I'm sure you had this.
Yeah.
They look right at you. And if you look alarmed, that's when they start crying. So you quickly learn, no, it's all good, kid. So the injury matters, but the context changes the volume of that injury. And that's, I think, a good way to think about placebos. They can turn that volume down.
Yeah, no amount of placebo effect can help me get on a roller coaster, Ross, unfortunately.
Is that true? You're not a roller coaster guy?
Don't like them. Yeah, I don't like them. But this is a great point. And so what I think you're saying is that the person is not imagining the pain. They're not imagining the pain relief either.
Side note on the roller coaster, because I'm the kind of guy who does the quick checklist and I get on the roller coaster and then it actually is kind of boring to me because I'm like, we're just riding around. So I have it from the opposite side. But you're right. So the distinction about this thing about imagining pain um, and imagining relief, I think that distinction matters. So, and this is one of my favorite studies about placebos. And really, I didn't know about this until we started doing some exploration here. But I think this really cuts to the chase. So there's pain studies where the placebo pain relief, the placebo and how it was able to reduce that pain was reduced by naloxone. So this is a drug that blocks opioid receptors. Yeah. Some of you know naloxone as the thing that people use to reverse opioid overdoses. Yeah, that one. So the fact that it can also reduce placebo pain relief, so it blocks that, tells us something important. So at least in some cases, this placebo analgesia works through the body's own opioid system, and that's a real thing. So the sugar pill doesn't have morphine in it, but it basically cues the body to release its own morphine-like chemicals. What do you think, Sandy?
That's so interesting. Of course, I learned a lot of the background around opioid abuse from Train Spotting, the novel. So yeah,
I love that movie.
Yeah, no, that was my introduction to a lot of the biology around this. So yeah, so the pill is inert, but the patient is not.
I should say Train Spotting was my introduction to Scotland. But that's right. So we react to it. So it's not about the pill is the point. It's about the baggage that comes with the pill and all the signals that it brings. So that's the simplest way to understand a placebo. It's not about the pill. The pill is just something, but the patient is not inert. The patient has internal pharmacology. And when they react to it, when your brain basically flips on its systems for tiling down that pain, to reducing the threat, to changing your body state, the placebo is the switch that flips that system on. I think that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, and that's a more respectable version of the the working through the theory behind this. It's not that you were fooled; it's that your body did something useful response.
Yeah, but to be honest, placebo effects are variable patient to patient. They're not equally strong in everyone. How about you, Sandy? Are you like a placebo responder or a placebo not responder? What do you think?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Fortunately, I've never had the requirement to kind of test the theory, but yeah,
That
I'm
you
not
know
sure.
of.
Yeah, that I know of. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
What
Uh,
about you, Ross? Have you experienced this firsthand?
I would probably be a placebo heavy responder because it would be like, oh yeah, this is going to completely work. And then, yeah, I would probably just get on with it. So probably. Um, so I would say, so in other words, these symptoms are not passive readouts. They're very active is the key points. And so the key is you want to set the proper setting. You want to create a story. You want to create trust. And then the patient will react to it. And all of that can then change your reaction. And that is, of course, lovely. But of course, it can also be confusing when you're running clinical trials and that sort of thing. What do you think, Sandy?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fascinating area, isn't it? And we're kind of layering, we've been layering this story. And I think, one of the things that you're describing there around those constructions is that if the symptoms themselves are constructed, that setting and the environment the patient finds themselves in, that really matters.
Yep, totally. So, shall we go back to the knee operation? Let's talk about this and what this now means in this context.
Yeah, sure. So let's go back to that and let's think about the story that wakes people up around this. The study involved patients with osteoarthritis of the knee. Some received arthroscopic surgery where the surgeon washes out or tidies up the joint. Others received a sham operation, essentially. They had the preparation, they had the operating theatre, they had even the incisions. They had the recovery period afterwards, but the key therapeutic procedure wasn't actually performed. And then the striking result was that the real surgery did not produce better outcomes than the sham surgery for the pain and the functional measures of the study and the outcomes.
Yeah, and I mean I don't know. I love that story that you started up with. But the key piece, as we've been discussing, is you didn't just wake up And, as if you had nothing had happened. You woke up with fake wounds, with bandages, painkillers, and they gave you a story, right? The surgeon says, "Yep, I did that." And all of that matters. And so when you're now deciding, okay, now I'm going to start running around and trying to show some movement with that knee, you don't have fear about that movement because you think it's been fixed. And so your body goes ahead and fixes it. You have more confidence about what you can do. And so the brain's like, okay, just get on with it. And especially with conditions like osteoarthritis, where the pain is shaped both by tissue damage, but also your brain, these sorts of rituals can be very effective.
Yeah, indeed. And it's interesting to look, of course, at the economics of all this, and they are almost as painful as the procedures
Is
itself.
that right?
Well, surgery is expensive. It uses theatre, staff, equipment, anesthesia, recovery beds, and follow-up. That's all a very expensive package. It also carries risks, of course. If the operation doesn't go as expected, if it doesn't outperform the ritual around the operation itself, then the system may be, I guess, buying the scars, the risk, and the belief at a very, very high price. Ross, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, first of all, importantly, again, surgeries for the most part are important. They actually cannot be replaced by placebo. That's crazy. If you fracture a hip, you have a bowel obstruction, you tear a tendon, you have appendicitis, you got to get that dealt with. But the knee example does tell us something important, and that is when an intervention is mainly aimed at pain or aimed at function, and the mechanism of the problem is not clear, sometimes, leaning into the theater part of it can be very effective.
Yeah, the patient may genuinely feel better, but the health system still has to ask, did the cost and the risk intervention add benefit beyond the actual ritual itself?
Sure. And that, of course, is your side of the equation. I just have to, think deeply about stuff. And that's why we have randomized controls.
Yeah.
That's, of course, a defense against mistaking all that drama for the actual mechanism of medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, but we still need the drama because patients are human after all.
True.
But we can't let that drama write the invoices and justify the costs.
Yeah. So let's get into this whole business about clinical trials, because I think that's where some real complexity comes in.
Yeah.
There are drug companies who probably the CEOs have a dartboard that says placebo on it, and they are throwing either darts or axes at the dartboard. Because I would say how many times have we seen something work beautifully, but no better than the placebo? But let's get into it. So let's say we test a new pain medication. Okay, we give it to 100 people, 40 of them improved. That sounds great. But as we just discussed, we need to know what happens with placebos. And let's say it all the way out. Pain changes over time. It fluctuates. People usually enter a trial when symptoms are especially bad, but time ticks away before you actually start, and then maybe moves back to their average or maybe a little bit better. They also are getting lots of attention from the nurses and doctors. They're getting monitored. They're going to appointments. They have hope that maybe this thing will work. And so if 40% improve on the drug, but 35% improve on the placebo, exactly what is the drug doing? Yeah. So if 40% improve on the drug and let's say 5% improve on the placebo, that's straightforward. Obviously, the drug is great. So this is why placebos are very important, because it tells us which parts of these are natural recovery and expectation. So I think what we want to separate is the value of placebo from the placebo effects of a potential drug, right? So what we're trying to understand is, does the drug have effects above and beyond its placebo effects? I think that's the key point here.
Yeah, indeed. And I find this quite fascinating because I see the effect of anxiety in the sort of patient group as well. And the fact that you're going through the treatment alleviates that anxiety. And that anxiety, I think, has a huge effect on the patient and the patient outcome. removing that anxiety. That seems to be a significant part of the ritual.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you think? You bear your experience as well?
Well, yeah. So, as I mentioned, this has been a real bear for clinical trials, but and so people have begun to turn to placebo pills and blame them for the failures of these. Has been my experience. You've seen this, but it's just, you can't get away from the fact that if it's a sugar pill and it's working just as well as the, drug pill that you're giving them, it's really hard to argue that that drug is doing something substantially more by the mechanism. And I think where that can matter. So you could say, well, who cares? The patient's getting better. I guess the question is, yeah, but how durable is that getting better? We discussed pain, but in cancer, maybe the tumor has gone down a little bit because you came when it was worse. And then by the time you're on the trial, it has regressed a little bit. But that's not something I would bank on for long term.
Yeah, indeed.
That's why the drug has to beat the placebo. Otherwise, you're basically selling a placebo at pharmaceutical prices.
Yeah, indeed. And I guess that justification for licensing the new medicine, that's really important consideration as well, Ross.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So I guess from a capital side, this is where it gets a bit brutal. You have to have a plausible mechanism, a decent safety profile, a good story for investors, and then the placebo group quietly eats your effective market up there.
Yeah, as we discussed, placebos are brilliant at ruining products, but at least it tells us when something is actually effective in hitting its target and doing, doing the biology properly.
Yes, it can be a great friend to patients and an enemy of weak evidence in this area.
Yep, that's the tension, my friend. We do want the helpful part, but we want to make sure we're not being fooled by the placebo part.
Yeah, so I guess this is the case that I find most, psychologically at least, a strange case, and that's the case of the open label placebo. The placebo that can work even when the patient knows that it's a placebo.
Okay,
Tell us a bit
now
more about
that's
that
the
one, Ross.
weird, yeah, that is the weird one. So an open label placebo, so it's the placebo, as you say, that is crazy because it kind of challenges the idea that you have to use a placebo with deception. So in cases of irritable bowel syndrome, IRS, patients were given pills clearly labeled as placebos. They were told the pills contain no active drug, but they're also told that placebo effects can be real. So I guess there's your treatment. And that taking the pills regularly may help activate mind-body mechanisms. This is so beautiful. And incredibly, some patients actually improved compared to no treatment at all.
This is what seems almost impossible to me. And if I know the pill is inert, it's not going to do me any good or make any difference, then what is actually being fooled?
First of all, I'm thinking about starting a placebo company.
I'm thinking about starting a drug
I
company
mean,
as well.
just think of all the things. I mean, you could treat so many things. It would be incredible. But the brilliance about this is, so you ask, if the pill's inert, what's being fooled? Well, maybe nothing is being fooled. Maybe ritual doesn't really require deception. I mean, we do understand this in aspects outside of medicine, right? You have graduation ceremony. That doesn't transform a student. They don't just literally magically, you put them in the hall and they are a student, and then they come out of the hall and now they're a fully developed professional. But it does change the moment, and that matters. A wedding ring, that's just a piece of metal, but it's not just a piece of metal, right? First coffee of the day does not magically create focus, but it's part of your ritual. So it says to your brain, all right, now it's time to start. And really, that's really what we're talking about, right? Medicines have symbols too. Prescription, that's a symbol. Pill bottle, we all recognize that. A scan result, you see that on television where they're all huddled around it, looking at it. We look at that, we immediately know what that means. A follow-up appointment, a clinician saying, all right, here's the plan. These are all things that tell us as the patient, hey, you're being cared for, something is being done, there's a path that we have built, and you're now on that path.
Yeah, it's the performance around this. This is what makes the open label placebo less like trickery and more like structured ritual.
Yeah, exactly. So in this way, you become not just a passive sufferer, but you're an active participant. And of course, ethically, it's much cleaner. You're not saying this is a powerful new medicine when it's not. You're saying this has no active drug, but the treatment ritual will help you with some of your symptoms.
Yeah, and the patient becomes biologically interesting and not just gullible.
And so, exactly, Sandy. So honesty does not necessarily destroy meaning. And I think at this point, it would really be helpful to give some very specific examples. And I think to do that properly, why don't we put a pin in this conversation for right now? Let's get more into things like Parkinson's, asthma, things like that, and really dig more deeply into it next time. This will be a perfect setup. What do you think, Sandy?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea. Nothing helps to contextualize the subject matter, really good, solid examples. And I know that you've done some of the sort of thinking and generated some really good background on some of these examples. And these really bring this whole question of the placebo effect really into some concrete examples that people can take away.
Lee, and I hope people, the examples are going to be pretty wild. I hope people are as sort of fascinated and blown away by them as we have been in going through them. But like I said, let's put a pin in that and let's talk a little bit about our wee bit of joy this week. Sandy, what you got?
Yeah, so thanks, Ross. Yeah, I think it's been a great time this summer for sport, and I'm a big sports fan, as you know. And this week I wanted to share a few kind of brief reflections on the winner of the Golf Open Championship at Royal Birkdale just 2 weeks ago. So unfortunately, I missed most of the actual game itself because I was in the Mull of Kintyre playing golf, as you know.
Aw.
But I usually watch this kind of religiously every year, and I was really curious. I wanted to know what actually happened in the final day. I've been following it quite closely from the Thursday, as you know, it's over 4 days, so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, moving day, incredibly exciting. You see the leaderboard change, and I wanted to know what actually happened. And I wasn't very familiar with Ryan Fox, the eventual winner. So I wanted to do some reading and I want to share what I found. Ross, you're going to find this particularly interesting. I'm really keen to understand what your thoughts are.
All right, do tell.
Let me begin. So one of the most frustrating things that, I think you and I can encounter on the golf course is really slow play when people take an age to decide what their next shot's going to be. They step up and they dress the ball maybe 2-3 times, and then eventually they make their play.
Maybe look around for their ball in the trees. Yeah, it's all very slow.
Right.
It's annoying.
It can be really frustrating. Well, Ryan Fox is most definitely not one of those people. He plays the game the way I like to play it, which is fast. And he does his thinking on his way to make the shot. So there's no delay when he gets to the ball. And he's renowned as one of the fastest players on the tour. So I thought this was really interesting. And to him, it's not a strategy as such. It's just his personality. It's the way that he likes to play it. So when he was interviewed on this topic, he said, I was always that way as a kid. I see things fast. It's not that difficult to pick a shot and a club. I get there and it all just happens quick. And the less time I have to think about it, the less bad stuff could creep in. So there you have it. He's all about kind of try and keep the negative thoughts out and just go through a bit like we're talking about the performative part of the placebo effect, just getting through his routine, getting to the ball, taking his shot.
I guess that's right.
So this all came to a head on the very, very final shot. When he got to the final green, he had to sink a 12-foot birdie putt to win the Open Championship. And he took just 22 seconds to make the shot. So if you're not familiar with golf, a 12-foot putt is most definitely not a tap-in. Ross, for us, a 2 foot par, that's never
Maybe.
a tap-in, right? That's always a bone of contention.
Yeah.
But for Ryan Fox, he simply stepped up, stepped into the putt, made the strike, and that was the career-defining moment. And he did all that in just 22 seconds. And I love his mantra. His mantra is see the shot, play the shot. See the shot, play the shot. So Ross, I'm never going to suggest that we should be reckless or feckless ever, but I think there's a lot that we can learn from Ryan Fox. So here it is. Do not procrastinate. When you have a difficult decision to make, focus on your intuition. Trust your experience and your judgment. Don't overthink things. Don't put things off. See the shot, play the shot. Simple. What do you think, Ross?
Yeah, I actually, like you, I'm a big proponent of that because otherwise, once I start overthinking it, then things like the yips and so on. Yep, I'm all in. Sounds like it would be a lot more fun to watch. I have to admit, I'm not much of a golf watcher.
Yeah.
But what I am a watcher of, Sandy, since we're on this topic, my wee bit of joy, I'm going to switch sports to something I do love watching, which is basketball. And in particular, I have to discuss something that is probably I know it's the large world news this week, but I'm still going to bring it to Ross and my own needs, which is, that's right, LeBron James is coming to Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, I did actually hear about this, and I really did want to. I was hoping you might bring this up. So brilliant! Tell us more.
Yeah, baby. Well, Sandy, you'll be shocked and learn from all of this emotion that I am a huge Philadelphia 76ers fan. What this means, you talk about soccer and all that stuff, but I've learned with the Sixers from childhood to learn to hope, then suffer, then completely overreact to things like LeBron James is coming. And then, of course, it always ends up in another life lesson. I mean, this is a franchise with real history. They've had Wilt Chamberlain, Dr. J, my man, Moses Malone, who's famous for his faux. And when they asked him how many games would it take to win the championship, Mo Cheeks, Allen Iverson, and yet somehow it's been 43 years since they've won the chip.
Yeah, so I suspect that you're feeling like LeBron James is going to flip that. He's going to make this story real, right?
It's big, Sandy. It's big. It's not just another player. LeBron James, for those Europeans who don't know who he is, he's the GOAT. Along with Michael Jordan, you can have those arguments. I would say they're like cheese and chalk. They're different. But in my opinion, he's the GOAT, and now he's definitely the GOAT. And in the twilight of his career, the guy is almost 42 years old, and he's still an elite player. He's putting on a Sixers jersey, which is kind of weird, but I don't care. It's pretty fabulous. It's like, Springsteen deciding as an old man to join a Glasgow pub band. You're not sure what to make of it, but you're definitely buying a ticket, and I am definitely flying back to watch this.
Yeah, so I guess what we're all wondering, Ross, does this make the 76ers favorites for the championship then?
Well, Sandy, I'm a scientist, so I'm not going to say something that's irresponsible, but hell yeah, of course it does. They're going to totally win the chip. Are you kidding? They have a super team. The Sixers, about a decade ago, invented something called the process, which probably everybody knows the phrase now, even though they don't know where it comes from.
Yeah.
It comes from the Sixers, basically, and this guy, Sam Hinkie, deciding to just go ahead and lose as many games as possible so they would just collect superstars. And that's how they win. So that didn't go so well. That led to a bunch of second-round exits. It's enough to, damage a person. So that's why LeBron arriving feels like basketball messiah. Hopefully he's the last piece. And that's what brings me joy, Sandy. LeBron James, Philadelphia 76ers. I hope you can hear the excitement. And as far as the process goes, we're playing the long game, baby.
I love the excitement that you're bringing through this, Ross. This is really getting us psyched up. Well, you're going to have to contain that excitement, folks, because that's it from us for today. And we look forward to talking more about the placebo effect in the next episode. And Ross has already enticed us a little bit with what we're going to cover in that pod.
I will bring this enthusiasm to placebo and Alzheimer's.
Great.
In the meantime, please subscribe. Please hit that like button. We really do appreciate that. And everybody, from the bottom of our hearts, keep the heed. And see y'all next time.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Yeah, see the vision clear. We're here to run the long game. Blueprint set, no fear. Playing out the long game, the long game.